Hi, this demo video is a continuation of setting up the Centrify service suite for evaluation. On this particular video, I'm going over advanced configuration of a Linux agent. Part 1, hopefully there'll be some more videos in the future. This is some advanced configuration. I'm already assuming you've already set up the backend and you've already set up the zones and you've already installed the Linux agent. In the previous videos, I've already set all that backend and I set up my test user to log into the Linux machine to make sure the agent was working. So please refer to those videos for setting everything up. So I'm assuming you've already seen those videos at this point. In this particular video, what I'll be doing is talking about some of the advanced configuration, specifically privilege management, rights roles, role-based access control, or RBAC, and dzdo. Privilege management in Centrify is often referred to as direct authorize. Direct authorize are privilege management or privilege identity management you hear sometimes in the industry. So direct authorize for Unix. Another video I talked about direct authorize for Windows. So direct authorize is a DZ. So dzdo is really a replacement for sudo. It's not a rip and replace. It works alongside, but the policies for raising your privilege is stored inside AD. So we'll be talking about that. Talking about computer roles. It's a little more advanced setting up. So an AD group of users has this access on an AD group of computers. So therefore, I only give DBAs the right to log in and do stuff on DBA computers, and only the web admins can log in and do stuff on the web computers. There's no reason for them to log in on computers that doesn't have, say, the Apache web server on it. And then I'll also talk about single sign-on, how to set up PuTTY so you can get the Kerberos ticket to log you in automatically, single sign-on on the Unix machines. All right, so let's jump in. So let's do a little recap. Again, a lot of this is all covered in the old videos, the original videos, I mean. So I already have a global zone and 3 children zone, a Linux, a Mac, and a Windows. And on my Linux, I set up authorization for my test users, Diana Worth. That's the person I'm logged in as right now. Diana Worth is my admin everywhere. So I set her up specifically to log in, gave her the Unix login role. I have global zones and children's zone, everything I like to define globally. And this role, the Windows role definition, or the Unix role definition is under role definition, Unix login, default out of the box. So we set that up. We used the default role, and I assigned it to Diana Worth. But let's go a little more deeper. What Centrify does is rights and roles. You define rights, you put rights into roles, and then you assign that role to a user, or better yet, an AD group at a zone level. So I can give an entire AD group the right to log in at an entire zone by doing rights and roles. So what I'm going to do inside of here is we have Diana Worth manually one user at a time, but you know what? Diana Worth is part of a group. She's a system architect. So if I look at my groups, in my particular world, these system architects is Diana Worth. I could be adding more. It could be 20 of them or 3 or 4. So I just don't want to give Diana Worth the right login. I want this entire AD group to log in and do elevated privileges. I want them to basically, they can do anything as root. They can run Centrify's dzdo, raise the privilege as anything, as star. So let's first just give them the right to log in. Instead of making it Diana Worth, let's give the entire AD group can log in. So at this Linux level, I could say let that group have the Unix login role, but I also want them to have raised privileges as well. So let's make it a role that can have the login plus raised privileges, and we'll just start with the login. So under role definitions, in my global zone, I'm going to right-click in the blank space and say Add New Role. So this is, I like to say role, and it's a Unix, and these are for web, not web, this is architects, sysarcs, right? System architects. This is Unix rights, so they can be visible, they can be listed on, some people can be visible but can't log in, like for looking at ownerships of files and things like that. We want visible, we want a non-restricted shell. A little more advanced configuration we'll cover in another video is restricted shell. You can log in and only run these 20 commands or these 5 commands. We want a regular shell, and we want both password login and non-password. Non-password only, you could have to come in with a smart card or Kerberos ticket. We can talk about that later, but right now, you can come with a Kerberos ticket or you could authenticate with a password. You don't need anything with auditing or anything like that, so I'm all done. So I made this role, and I got to give this role that Unix right, this PM access right. So inside these rights and roles, Centrify has PAM access, the right to log in, some SSH stuff, and then some commands, which we're going to put in here. These are like the sudo-like commands. So I can add in commands inside of here, and this is going to be the right to raise your privilege to run certain commands as root or as another ID. This is the sudo equivalent, and this is the PAM right, the login all. So we're going to go ahead and give this person, or give this role the right to do some login all and then some extra commands. So let's first give them the right to login all. So if I go into my role and I right click and say add right, I want to only work on the global, so up top I can filter out. So let's give this role the right to log in. So right now I made a role that's very similar to this default Unix login role. But besides logging in, I'm going to give a couple extra rights. But let's just do one thing at a time. If I go down to my authorization, my child zone, instead of doing Diana Worth, let's let her AD group log in. So anyone else is just like Diana Worth. So I call this Unix System Architects, and I want her AD group to log in. Choose group. So System Architects. So this entire AD group can log in because they have this role, and I'm going to give some more advanced features to that role in a second. Let me delete Diana Worth. But if I did this right, if I go back to my Linux child zone, right click, show effective Unix user rights, Diana Worth is still there because of the role assignment for her AD group, and she can log in. No commands yet. Let's add those commands. So again, under the rights part, this is PAM access, the right to log in and do some things like that. SSH. Some applications to the SSH rights can be defined here as well. Here's down some more specific SSH rights inside of there. We don't need to worry about that. I'm going to go into commands, and I'm going to do, this is where my sudo like command. So I can right click and add one command at a time. By the way, we can import an entire sudoers file. Import sudoers file. And then I can import that in, and then we can massage it. Again, we'll talk about that in another video, but right now let's do one command at a time. So I'm going to right click, new command, and this is basically star. This is the wheel group of everything. So Unix wheel equivalent all. So let's say they can do everything. So they can run anything as root. So the command parameter here, this is a pattern matching. Well, I'm going to match star, and I'm going to say the specific path is star. So those admins that can do anything as root, they want them to still run dzdo command. We're still going to track them that they ran it, not root. So Bob, Bill, Joe, Diana Worth ran this command, but it's the dzdo, again, replacement for sudo, but instead the policies are stored inside of AD. So this is a parameter. Later on I can put specific commands that match it. This is a pattern matching. So the star is matching the pattern here. It's going to be star and star. They can run anything. Priority 1. Basically, if this pattern matches a couple different things, which one has the highest priority? Restricted shell, we talked about that before. Do I want this to be run instead of restricted shell? No. So I do not want this run restricted role. Run as, this is who they're running as. By default, it's root, and that's what we're going to use. This command, when you do any command star, I'm going to run as root. I don't need anything from environment. Under attributes, top is reauth. So when I type dzdo, does it ask me for some kind of reauth? Well, right now I want to ask me for my AD password again. I can have it not ask for anything, so it just lets me in. Or I can do MFA. MFA is a little more advanced. We'll talk about another video. You need the Centrify identity service, which runs in the cloud. And we can do MFA. Very similar to when you log in your bank, you get a text to your phone or things like that. We can do all that MFA stuff when someone goes to log in. So at that shell prompt, use the Kerberos ticket or use your AD password. And then when they're doing the dzdo, hey, we're going to do extra MFA. Right? We can add that in. So that's another product. Right now, we're just going to reauth using the password. All right. So then I'm done. So I have this right, Unix equivalent all. I want to put that to this role. So I go back to the role, right click, add right. I can filter by global, and I can filter by command just to make it easier for me. There it is. So now I have, besides, this is that default role. I made another one. They can log in, but now this is even powerful. They can do everything. This is only going to go to the system architects. And I've already given the architect group that role. So now if I right click and look at the children's zone of Linux, Diana Worth can still log in, but now the command should be everything. So again, I discussed this before. I just made a policy change. What am I doing? There is no Centrify backend. I'm storing things inside of AD. So it's stored on this particular domain controller. My agent could be connected to a different domain controller. You got DC to DC replication, and then my agent talks to its domain controller every X number of minutes. So right now, I only have one domain controller, but it still could be 20 minutes before my agent talks to it and gets a new policy. So I'm actually still root on that machine. There's a command called -flush -F to force it. So I'm going to flush the cache. So it just went and talked to its domain controller and got a new policy. You can look at policies by typing dzInfo, and then I can say the name of the user, Diana Worth. So they should see that. There you go, Unix wheel equivalent. Now Diana Worth has that. So if I go back into here and log in via PuTTY, so she was able to log in before. We did manual, one user at a time. Now I did an AD group can log in, and then also elevated permissions. So I can't do it just if I do it manually, just cat etchy shadow. Etchy shadow is owned by root. If I type dzdo, now it's going to ask me for a password. The first time you run this, it's going to give you this little warning: with great power comes great responsibility, type of thing. So then I type in the password, and I look. There's the etchy shadow file. We have a timeout value, so this is only a couple minutes later. I don't have to keep doing it. If I want to do any other command, I can do as root. After a certain time, it'll ask me for my password again. So there you go. Anyone else who's put in that same AD group as Diana Worth, they automatically can log in everywhere, and they can do raise privileges. This is a small group of people who can do raise privileges for any command as root. Other people, like we're going to work on the web server admins, they can only log into a certain set of machines and then run a certain set of commands as root to modify the Apache config file. That's what we'll do next. So let me go back up to my Centrify. So we set up all the people for that are system architects. So now what I want to do is the web team. I have a Unix web servers team. So if I go into my Active Directory here, there's actually a team of web servers, web admins. And if I look at that member, I have one person. But again, it could be 20 or 2,000 people that are web server admins. So I want them to log into just the web computers. Any place that's running Apache. They don't need to log into all of them, not like the architects. They only need to log into the computers that have Apache running on them. And then on those computers, they need some elevated privileges to stop and start services, to VI config file, and a couple more. So let's start with the commands they need to do. So if I go back in authorization, I'm going to define a Unix right, go to command. Let's do what some of these, what a web server admin might do. I'm just going to do 2, but you could have as many as you need. So I'm going to right click, say new command. I like to do, let's see, Unix web command service. So they can basically run the HTTPD service, or actually that's backwards. Right, and the command is going to be exactly that, star. So I'm doing a pattern matching service, and where is the service command coming from? This one is standard system path, so that's going to be the path that gets the service command, and then HTTP star, HTTPD star, they can run. So I'm going to do that again, priority 1. This particular command again. I'm going to allow it to be in a restricted role. It's okay. I might make a restricted role for this type of thing. Running as root is fine because that's what needs to stop and start the services as root. And if I go to attributes, let's not re-authenticate for this particular stopping and starting services. And then another command is maybe VIing the main config file. So let's call this Unix web command VI conf or something like that. So I want to VI the main web conf file. So I can say VI and then specifically say a command. All right. So etc HTTPD conf httpd.conf. So I'm specific on what they can modify. My VI is coming from the standard user path, and I give priority 1 here. I'm okay with the restricted shell. I want to run as root. That's who owns that config file. This particular one, let's do a reauth again on password. So now I have 2 commands. So I have an AD group that can do this, right? So I'm going to assign this role to an AD group. So let's make this role. So what I can do is right-click in here and add role. So this is Unix web admins, right? So Unix web admin, and let's see, we have to call everything role. So I'm gonna call it role Unix web admins. So Unix web admins, this is the role, everything they can do. They can log in and then run. I have 2, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 different commands as root they need to do things with the Apache web server. Again, I want this particular role to have a non-restricted shell, and I'm gonna allow both password and non-password log in. I don't need anything here in these kind of extra tabs. So Unix web admins, what can they do? Remember my other assist architecture, they can log in and then they can do anything. Well, this particular one, we want them to log in and then do only a few things. So I'm going to right click and say add write. I want to do everything from the global. They can, where's my login? They can log in, and then I want them to run stop and start the service, and then VI Apache. So I got a web admin role that can do this. So I could give that AD group the right to run this role on an entire zone or on one computer. But that might be too much. If my entire zone here of Linux could have 10, 20, 3,000 computers, but only a handful, only 2 of them, only 80 of them are web computers. So I don't want to give this role over the entire zone, but I don't want to go into each computer. Remember, each computer has a role assignment. But I don't want to go into 88 of these computers and give them this role. So I want to give them only to the computers that have a web server on them. So if I have an AD group of computers, which I'll make here in a second, I can say, you know what, I only let the people that are in the AD group of users for web servers log into the computers that have web servers on them. And that's actually what we do inside what's called computer roles. An AD group of users has this Centrify role on this AD group of computers. So for me, let me make that AD group of computers. So under groups, I need to make all the computers that have my Apache, my web servers. I'm going to say new group, Unix web servers. All my Unix web servers. And right now I only have 1. You say add, I got to change my object type to be computers. And I have my web server is nsn6. So now I have an AD group that has all my web servers and has 1 right now, but it could be, 30, 40, something like that. So with computer roles, I have my role. I want this particular role, web admins, to be assigned just to the AD group of users, the web server admins, just on these particular computers, the ones that I've defined that AD group. And that's what computer role is. So I can right-click inside of computer roles, and I'm going to do this for the entire Linux zone. Computer roles, right-click, create computer role. So computer, I'm going to call compute role web servers. So something, whatever description you want to give. And now what AD group is this tied to? This is a computer role that's tied to a certain AD group. I can create it now, or I can click on it and find it. So I'm going to bind. So this is my group, Unix web servers. Click on that. So this is a role on a certain AD group. Now what is that assignment? So on the left side on computer roles, once I make it, you can see here, if I can expand it, if I stay on top of the computer roles, it says this is the name and this is the group it's on. But now I got to give the actual Centrify role and on what group of users. So if I click on here and expand this, it says role assignment. So I don't have one yet. So right click on this role assignment. So this again, I want to give that role we created, Unix web admins, and I want to give it to what? I want to give it to a group. Unix web admin. So this is Unix web admins, all my users have this role. So this is an AD group of users, all the web admins have this particular role, which gives them, again, the right to log in and run a couple elevated commands. And on what machines? Well, I defined it in my computer role. When I did my computer role, only the web server. So if I click on the members on the left here, it should say nsend6. So this is the beauty. I've assigned an AD group of users a role on an AD group of computers. New people come in or leave, take them in and out of that AD group. You make a new users come and go. You put them in and out of an AD group. New computers come, and now you put Apache on a new computer. You put that in an AD group as well. So if I would actually go into this Unix web servers and add a new AD group, add a new computer. Later on, I add Apache to a new computer. I hit apply. If I go back to Centrify and then refresh, under computer roles, under members, now it has 2 of them. So as you're adding functionality to computers or spinning up new computers, you add that to an AD group that defines what it does. As you add new users that are web admins, you add them to the AD group of users, and you're not touching Centrify. So inside of Centrify, you're not doing a lot of caring and feeding every single day if you set up your role-based access control correctly. And computer roles is a great, powerful way of doing that. Now, in my environment, I do not want new CentOS does not have it. Only my one computer has it. So now if I go back here and refresh it, computer roles, role assignments, members, right? So my user, remember I'm talking about web admins. My user here is Wanda Web. So this Wanda Web is part of this group. They've been given this role on all the computers, right? So you would think if I right click on here and I do show effective user rights, is Wanda Web going to show up? The answer is no. And see if you figure out why. I'll wait a second. Long enough. All right, so kind of talked about this before. 2 things you need to do to log in. You have to have a Unix profile and you have to have a role. Well, we've given Wanda a role, but Wanda does not have a Unix profile. If I go into here, only Diana Work does. And again, we can bulk load in a bunch of files, an etc password file, a bunch of ways of filling this out. There's also a zone provisioning agent. We can build this automatically based off a trigger group. We can have a bash job doing that. We'll talk about that in other videos. Right now, we're just doing it manually. But I can add a user to zone. Let's add Wanda. So there's Wanda Web. Click OK. My UID I'm going to generate from the SID, which is Centrify will do that, so it's unique. So now Wanda has that Unix profile. So if I click on nsend6 and say show effective user rights, Wanda should be there. Role assignment, there it came, PAM access login, and a couple commands. But new CentOS is not part of that computer role. So if I click on that one and right click and say add show effective user rights, Wanda Web is not there, only Diana Worth because she's part of the other group. So there you go. Now I made a slice and dice of, I could have thousands of computers on the Linux, but only if you're a web server admin, you get rights to only the web server computers, which in my environment is only one. So again, I added to one machine, I added to one domain controller, wait for replication, or I can go and flush it out. I could do so now Wanda Web should be able to log in and have elevated privileges. Let's see how that works. There you go. So if you don't have a home directory, Centrify will create a home directory upon first login. If I have regular user, I can't run it. But now if I run dzdo, it can tell me and then I can start it. All right. It didn't ask me for password because I didn't do reauth. If I want to vi the config file, which was etcd-conf, notice it says read only down at the bottom. I do not have privilege to do anything like that. But if I run it with dzdo, I can. So Wanda Web only can log into those computers that have Apache can only run the commands she needs to do with elevated privileges on just the specific commands she needs to do her job. And we use computer roles, so it's really easy to set up for future management of role-based access control. If you have more computers that get Apache put on them, put in that AD group that represents the web servers. If you have more users in this group, put them in the same group that Wanda's in. One more thing I wanted to show is everything we're doing is logged locally. So everything I've been doing here, I can look at so you see these files, see inside of the Centrify syslog, we're still doing the audit trail, and you can see we're doing dzdo, a certain user, and it says they're running VI as root. So you can even look at this in real time. But yeah, this is, we're going to be logging everything, again, down at the bottom. So we put an audit trail locally. We know that it wasn't root that ran it. It was Wanda Web using Centrify dzdo to run the VI command to run as elevated privileges. So that's still inside the standard syslog configuration. Now, because it's logged locally, it can be sent up to all the ARC sites and Splunks of the world. So one more thing I want to cover is PuTTY and single sign-on. If you look at, again, assuming you installed everything based on the videos, we installed the agent and OpenSSH. Centrify's OpenSSH is set up for GSAPI. GSAPI allows Kerberos single sign-on. I can actually show you with a look at the config file. So grep GSAPI out of, let's see, the Centrify SSH package. Oh, Centrify DC. Obviously, I don't have permission. Let's do dzdo. So these particular variables, we've already set that up in the Centrify SSH package, so single sign-on with Kerberos will work. If you have stock SSH, you got to set this up. You don't normally have to recompile or anything. It's just modifying some conf files. Centrify has a KB article on how to modify stock SSH to do this. So the SSH server can handle Kerberos ticket. Now we got to set up the SSH client on the Windows side, which is PuTTY. So Centrify's PuTTY, if I go into here, all we have to do is under the left side, go to Kerberos. Now standard PuTTY has this as well. That there's another way of doing that inside of standard PuTTY. You can go inside of auth, and we can set this up for GSS API there. But we have is inside the Centrify PuTTY. What we've done is added in right here. You just go to Kerberos, and there's a little button there. So let me go in here and set my session up. I got it set up the way I wanted, a nice big font, so I'm going to load that up. But I'm going to change it, call it, and then under here, go to Kerberos, click that button, save it. Now, hopefully I'm sending over the Kerberos ticket that I logged in with. It should let me in. There you go. So I use Kerberos authentication, single sign-on. And if I logged onto this desktop with a smart card, I had a PIN. I never used my password. Now I use Kerberos ticket to log in. I just got I just got compliance to get the single sign-on, HSPD 12 compliance. There's a lot of people trying to do PIV mandatory. So get the Kerberos ticket with a smart card. You never use the password. Now I just set up Kerberos authentication for single sign-on. So that's all I wanted to cover in this video. Thank you very much.